we thought that this plan should be as inclusive as possible. However, in drafting it, we wanted to have the ability that if there was an organization that this community felt was totally unacceptable, that they could be disallowed that privilege. And generally, we have practiced that way. We have never denied anyone, but we were prepared to have raised that issue if we felt someone inappropriately requested to be on there. And I was asked earlier today if I could explain what one might be, and it's hard because what we've said here is, first off, you have to be locally based, so they have to be a White Bear Lake area organization. So if some club from southern Minnesota wanted to be on our website, the Minnesota Wooden Boat, there's a Wooden Boat Collectors Association that's somehow affiliated down in, I think it's Albert Lea. They couldn't be on here. Because they're not based here in White Bear Lake. On the other hand, if the White Bear Sailing School wanted to be linked there, they would be allowed to if they wanted. But what we were thinking in terms of somebody that might be unacceptable would be one that promoted hate. An organization that was known for being really at odds with our contemporary community standards. But that opens up a door that raises a lot of questions with the First Amendment. So we had a phone call today from a concerned organization that would, they applaud the city in being as inclusive as possible on here. They think it's a good way of building a strong community by providing that, but they are very, very concerned about what legally we would be establishing as a public forum to excluding people. But rhetorically, we're saying if there was an organization that promoted or felt that abuse of women was acceptable, would we want them linked to our website? The answer is no, and there's a constitutional basis to prevent that. So we said perhaps our draft policy needs a little bit of work, and we'd be glad to work with that. So this evening, this is brought at request. And it's here for your consideration. If you think it's a bad idea, and you want to reject it, there's two options. One, that if you could take a position, just say, no, we're not going to allow anybody on there. And I think personally that's short-sighted. It's the safest by far. But I think the ability for people to come to our website, which is very easily found, and it's very frequently visited, and be able to get information. If we're the clearinghouse of activities and organizations within our community that helps link people, I think that that's a good public purpose. Our objective is to not screen people other than take out the commercial uses and so forth. So if you're in agreement with that and you'd like to make suggestions on this amendment, we would be glad to work on this more, but I would also request that this too be continued for at least 2 weeks so that we could work with some other concerned parties to see if we can't achieve the same objective, which would be to make it as inclusive as possible, but if there was something that was clearly beyond the bounds of acceptability and could be refused within the confine of the First Amendment, then we'd hope to be able to reach that common ground within 2 weeks and bring back a final draft for your consideration.
Mr. Jones, then Ms. Johnson.
I would like to see what defines White Bear Lake area in this as far as trying to draw that radius around. I think that might help. I am leery of the First Amendment if there was a pro-racist group that wanted that established themselves in White Bear and that could be considered fraternal and political and nonprofit, faith-based, I guess, if you really wanted to take it that far. I'd have a tough time denying that, to be honest with you, at least for First Amendment. Personally, I'm disgusted, but where do you draw that? That's what you're bringing up. Where do you draw that line? And I guess what would help in that is if we do define the area of what White Bear Lake is, White Bear area, and that these groups can have to be within this area to even use it. I think that would help certainly limit it.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, Councilman Jones, I work with a lot of groups within our broader community, and some are very comfortable calling the White Bear Lake area our school district geographically. And one, and particularly even the partners, defines it as a White Bear Lake and Mahtomedi school districts. Nothing I've seen goes beyond those two boundaries. So we have, for instance, we have another policy resolution pertaining to charitable or lawful gambling that says that if you have a license to conduct lawful gambling with any liquor establishment of the city, you have to expend a certain percentage of your proceeds within the White Bear Lake School District. So if they were going to put playground equipment at the Onika School in Hugo, they could do that. But if they were going to put it in at a school down in Maplewood, they could not. So it defined that, and if the council would, and I think that would be helpful, because that question could come up, and perhaps by saying White Bear Lake area, we could define it, and I'd like to have more feedback from the council, but we'd first recommend the geographic boundaries of our school district.
I think that would be good, as well as I would include Mahtomedi just because of the lake and its entirety. This does bother me that someone was removed from the website just because of that. I mean, if it's a non-commercial, non-profit, faith-based, I would want to see that back on immediately. If anybody, my understanding is something was removed due to this
Well,
phone call.